everybody. We're happy to have you with us. This is Jace Finman, also known as Jace the Ace, and this is my partner in crime here, Finbarr Callan, also known as Sir Finbarr, and we are here to bring you Pink19 from Las Vegas. Yeah, we have quite a bit that we expect to do this week. We've got some sessions that we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
We've got some discussions that we're planning to have about Agile 4, which is the big news this week, but we also want to relate that back to some of the other topics that we work with, like DevOps and Verism and blockchain, and maybe even give you a sneak peek into ISO 20000, which has recently been revised. We've got our ISO 20000 expert here.
For my sins.
Yes, who can tell us a little bit more about what's going on with that and how relevant or irrelevant it may be to the refresh of Agile. Yes, that's something that we'll discuss later.
Mm-hmm.
Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am founder of GoodCert, which you can find us at goodcert.com. I've been an Agile trainer now for about 14 years, just shy of 14 years. First got involved in it in version 2. It turns out that my trainer for the Agile Service Manager certification was Finbarr, so I'm going to keep complimenting him all week. But yeah, that was when there you go, yeah, we'll pump it up. So yeah, I took it in Dubai with HP, and Finbarr was a trainer. We've actually been buddies ever since, and we've worked off and on together for just about that whole entire time. Yeah. Now, I may sound like I'm a big Agile veteran, having been in it for 14 years, but Finbarr's been in it even longer. He first got involved with Agile in version 1. Yeah, which actually tell us a little bit about what you've seen with the evolution of Agile over the years, because it has changed dramatically from those very first publications that we had in version 1. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it earlier. If you think about version 1, which came out in '89, and the focus was very much, as they said then, central government mainframe operations. So even within IT, it was quite limited in its scope and offering to some extent. Then version 2 came along, and we had service support and service delivery, which kind of broadened the scope and got people to think about the business and the other sorts of stakeholders.
Yeah.
Version 3, of course, then you could say the key concept to some extent was value, value creation, value delivery. That what's the word? Formula on the courses: V equals U plus W, value equals utility and warranty, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's right. We've still got that.
So now with ITIL 4, I guess it's moving on. So version 3, it was value and customers. Now it's consumers and delight and all those sorts of things. So it is quite interesting to see how it's grown and expanded over time, how the focus has shifted. And in some ways, become less IT focused than it was in some ways.
Yeah, that's true.
Which links in to some extent with 20,000, because again, 20,000 when it first started, very, very closely aligned with ITIL, certainly version 2. The next edition moved away slightly. I would say the new one, which is edition 3, which came out in September last year, whilst the primary audience is still IT, it's still, as it says in the standard, it's service management, which can be applied to any organisation. So it's interesting how the standard and some of the frameworks have moved away from that initial very narrow focus into something much broader, perhaps harder to define.
Yeah, no, and I've heard you mention that before, and I do see that as a common thread through ITIL 4, that although IT is still the primary audience, they're wanting us to invite business people into that discussion. Yeah. And that service management really is bigger and broader than what IT can certainly deliver. We're always going to depend on other business units for help. They're always going to depend on us, right? It's all about what they call in ITIL 4 co-creation of value now. And getting everybody together, trying to figure out service management as a team.
And if you look at the Verism, which brings in everything, which was kind of always there in the background to some extent with ITIL, certainly version 3, but very much come to the fore now in terms of you've got all these different frameworks and methodologies and standards, DevOps, Lean, Agile, 20,000, 27,000, 9,000, till yada yada,
List
blah,
goes
blah, blah,
on, right?
all of those. But then when you look at it, you've got to bring in the business requirements and the legal frameworks and all, basically everything else, the whole consumer environment, if you like. Makes it much, much bigger. Everybody needs to be involved on a, I would say on a universal scale, but certainly on a much, much broader scale than it used to be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we used to talk about IT as the provider, sort of subservient to the customer, right? We had these layers, so the customer had its own users, but then the customer also had us as a provider on the back end. We had our own suppliers as part of that chain. But you're right that Verism has really redefined that relationship, basically saying that the organization is a service provider.
Yeah.
You've got HR, you've got sales, you've got IT, all on the same level, basically working in partnership to serve that organization's customers. So I definitely see what you mean. And ITIL 4 is definitely piggybacking on a lot of that guidance. In fact, that's something that we see a lot in ITIL 4, references to Agile and DevOps. Not necessarily to Verism, but very similar concepts, like concept of the consumer and the organization being a provider.
Yes. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
I remember seeing on something on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, a guy that I follow anyway on Twitter, he's just, I know who he is, he's a science fantasy writer, Harry Turtledove is his name. He does these sort of alternative histories. So he wrote one basically where, with all apologies, but the South won the Civil War.
Okay.
With AK-47s.
Oh no! Oh my goodness.
Anyway, what he said on one of his Twitter tweets the other day was, there are no new ideas. They're just repackaged differently. Yeah. And if you think about it, it is still very, very true. No matter which way you're coming at it, whichever framework, methodology, guidance, whatever you want to look at, the fundamental, the underlying ideas are still the same. We need to deliver something to somebody. What's the best way of doing it? And that's kind of the fundamental idea, I think, of all of them.
Yeah, just to expand on that, we were talking about this during breakfast, that we had a dry spell in ITIL, I guess is the best way to put it, where we had a major refresh of the framework in 2007 with version 3, but that since then, over 4 or 5 years, there was a lot of enthusiasm. There was then a little bit of a waning of interest just because it got so long in the tooth. But that sort of forced us as training providers to go out there and seek out other stuff that was popular and that was gaining notoriety.
Quite.
So you and I specifically started looking at DevOps, putting DevOps courseware together.
Yeah.
I also looked at blockchain, which you helped me review. We've also looked at Verism, which, as we've said, has a lot of really good content in it that ITIL has been piggybacking on to some extent here in version 4. So I think, seeing those references in ITIL 4 sort of makes me think, we're right back where we started again, right? We've got a whole new refresh, but it incorporates all these things that we've been working on over the last 3 or 4 years. As we've waited for this new subject matter to come out. But now it's all blended, so it's not even separate anymore. I think all of these frameworks are sort of racing toward that end. How do we figure out how to blend what we're doing with what other organizations are working with, like DevOps and the rest? So it's interesting.
And it's looking at it, again, it's back to that point of looking at the bigger picture in terms of IT's not a separate department, the dark arts of IT as it used to be all those years ago. You're an end user, you wouldn't understand it if I told you, and if I didn't tell you, your head would explode, kind of thing. Now IT absolutely is at the centre of business operations, and quite rightly so. And it's breaking down all those sorts of barriers. So putting IT front and centre instead of sort of being an afterthought, an add-on, and then there's IT sort of thing. It does make it. Well, it is critical to organisations' operations, and it puts it there, and it makes the business more aware of what IT has to offer, what IT needs to do, and IT needs to be more aware of its place in the business and be much more, I think, proactive in terms of getting in there and saying, these are opportunities, we should take advantage of these and that kind of stuff.